Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers, joined by attorney Cesar Gavidia, and we are going to have the pleasure to discuss one of Cesar's recently resolved cases against Unum Disability Insurance Company, world's largest long-term disability company. And in these videos, we like to talk about the reasons that they denied our client disability benefits, what your strategy was to overcome the denial, and then provide some tips for people who either have an appeal or want to protect themselves from getting denied. So let's hear about the facts of your case.
So here, Greg, our client was a regional director for a state community college. She'd been diagnosed with cervical radiculopathy, spondylosis in her neck, lumbar spondylosis, bilateral carpal tunnel. So she had a lot of issues going on. She underwent an anterior cervical discectomy and fusion, so a pretty involved, serious surgery. And actually Unum paid during that time that she'd gone out on disability to have her surgery done, and then through what they determined to be kind of this arbitrary recovery period.
Right.
And we've seen them do that. Basically, they have their in-house doctors say that, well, the recovery period here would be expected to be 8 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever it is. They basically approve them up to that point. Then they usually conduct another medical review or reach out to her surgeon or their surgeon and say, hey, does everything look stable? Does everything look like it's in proper place? Can they go back to work? And 9 times out of the 10, their surgeon, if they're not really up to speed on what's going on, haven't seen the claimant in a couple weeks, then they're going to say, yeah, they should be fine to go back to work. And that's kind of what happened here. And based on that statement from her doctor, they terminated her claim.
So what did you do to overcome the denial?
So the obvious thing was reaching out to her doctor, and what I wanted to do was get her in front of her doctor with a very customized, specific type of questionnaire that we put together for them to go through based on their examinations, based on their review of their own medical records, the ongoing problems that they continued to have. Our clients, it didn't resolve her neck pain. It didn't resolve the radiculopathy issues. I mean, even these surgeons know that that the surgeries are not 100% effective or guaranteed. In some cases, they may just lessen the symptoms or make them not as severe, but they're still there. And that's exactly what occurred here. And it did nothing for her carpal tunnel. It did nothing for her lumbar issues. And she still continued to have significant problems and limitations on those, based on those issues as well. But once we got the doctor understanding what the issues were here, what her occupation involved, we got a support for our appeal. The appeal was submitted and they overturned it. But this was really only a partial victory because they overturned it only up to a certain period of time. Now, during this time, our client unfortunately lost her health insurance. So she couldn't go back to this surgeon that she was, that was being paid through the private health insurance that she had.
Right.
Because she's no longer insured. There was no way to pay this doctor. And being a specialist and a surgeon, to go out of pocket was very, very costly. So Unum basically put her in a position where there's this gap in treatment, and they used that against her in this partial approval denial, and said, well, because she hasn't seen the doctor and there are no medical records to continue supporting the disability, we're going to deny her. Now, she was also a veteran, so she at that point switched to the VA for her care. But the VA is so overwhelmed and so burdened,
Hard to get in.
It's very hard to get in. And so she's only now getting in to see these doctors again, to see specialists and doctors again. So now, as part of this appeal, we need to gather the records from the VA, hopefully, and it's sometimes very hard to even get the support from the VA doctors. So in combination with the records we're going to need to retrieve from the VA, which we feel are going to be very supportive, also schedule her for some additional testing that is going to show the level of loss she has in terms of functionality and what her true limitations are.
So the issues you're talking about is you won the appeal, but then Unum only said we'll pay up to a certain date. We want to see additional medical support.
Right.
So how much of a time gap do you now have to cover?
So basically, it's not even, and it's interesting because some people go to the doctor, like a surgeon like this, and they say, well, everything looks like it's set. I don't need to see you for a year.
Right.
It's only been like 5 or 6 months
Okay.
since she saw this doctor, and when they issued the denial. So So really, we're not talking about a tremendously large gap in treatment here.
Right. And is 5 or 6 months really reasonable to say you're not under the care of a doctor?
I don't believe it is. I mean, you're not talking about such a jump in recovery and resolution of someone's symptoms from a very serious surgery, a significant surgery, when they're complaining of these ongoing problems. But that is what Unum and many of these disability insurers, they know that these things occur, that people go through tremendous hardships, losing their health insurance sometimes is just the tip of the iceberg. Some people lose their homes. They lose much, much more than that. And they basically put them up between a rock and a hard place. And it's really not fair. It's really, really not fair.
But the other issue is that she had surgery. So now I know in the appeal we discussed a strategy that you're going to go back to the doctor and say, really, in the last 6 months, do you think it was reasonable that her condition hasn't changed? Which of course the doctor is going to say it's the same. And what else would she do in those 6 months? I mean, once you have surgery, it's kind of the pinnacle of treatment. She'd already done therapy and everything else. So other than checking in just to satisfy Unum, which she has to do just to have a doctor still say, I guess, hey, you have medical limitations and restrictions, I guess on an emergency basis she could go to the ER too.
Right.
And report what's going on with her.
And it's a matter of also showing, I mean, basically they've reached, and it's somewhat of this term of art that they've reached maximum medical improvement. But yeah, in essence, that she's not going to get any better, whether it's through additional surgery or through therapies or anything else. This is just a management of pain situation.
But aren't there provisions in some of the disability policies, I don't know if it was in this particular policy, that says if further medical treatment won't do anything for you, then you don't need to get any more treatment? Is that something you have in this? I mean, it's rarely accepted by the insurance companies.
So
but
that's
it is,
like, I call that the Trojan horse provision. Why? Because basically they make you, they give the claimant the impression that, hey, look, if you just get your doctor to suggest or say that, that no additional treatment is going to improve your condition, that's it. That's all you need to do. You don't have to continue seeing them. You don't have to do anything else. But as we see here, essentially, if you don't have the records to support that that you continue to have ongoing problems, that you continue to see someone that's documenting the symptoms that you're having, all they're going to say is that you don't have medical records that support your symptoms, your limitations, any of your complaints. So I don't really, I mean, yes, there is that provision, but it's really kind of a misleading provision because they'll get you one way or the other.
So the situation that you've brought up now is we have a client who they got her a little bit of money. Is she on Social Security disability?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
She was actually a state employee, so didn't even have sufficient credits because usually they don't pay into that. Yeah, so she didn't even have sufficient credits for that.
But we have a lot of clients who can't afford to get the medical care because when they have to go cash pay, it's several $100s out of pocket. So people always say, well, Greg, I know I need to go to the doctor. What am I supposed to do? And I tell those people that what you need to do is, some of the options are, if you're in the VA, then you got to seize on those benefits and try to go, even though we know there's a wait. And that will help when we present this appeal to say, look, it could take 4 or 5 months to get an appointment. There's nothing I can do about it. Right. The other thing is, if you don't have those benefits, there are local community hospitals that you can go to. There are medical clinics at universities and things like that, that if they even do charge, it's a very nominal amount.
Right.
Teaching facilities and hospitals like that. So we give guidance to our clients to say, you need to go here, you need to go there.
And sometimes, even if you just reach out to your treating doctor's office and you say, listen, I encountered this situation with my health insurance, what can you do for me as an out-of-pocket patient? They'll work with you. They may charge you, I mean, it may still be $100, $150, but they'll work with you to try to limit the cost.
Because the insurance companies often aren't paying the doctor more than $75 to $100 for a visit. And the other thing is that if they go to the doctor and we're representing the client on an appeal, we are also able, as a case expense, to pay the doctor for an expert opinion or a report fee, just like the insurance company reaches out to a doctor that they hire. So that is a way also to help the client as a case expense, often in terms of going back to the doctor, because the doctors don't get paid to fill out these reports, and I think it's appropriate for them to get paid. Unfortunately, the client doesn't necessarily want to come out with a couple $100 out of pocket to pay the doctor to do the report, but the doctor's like, look, I'm getting beat up by these insurance companies. I used to get $500 every visit. Now I get $50 or $75. So if you want me to take a half hour to write a report for you, I have to get some kind of compensation. And so doctors that we work with usually appreciate that. They like the guidance. They obviously like to get paid for their time, which they can. And when the clients that we're representing and handling these cases on a contingency fee basis, there's no risk for the client because there's no money out of pocket for them. If the client has to pay, they're only going to have to reimburse the expense if the case is won. So that's another thing that helps claimants out when they're in the situation where they can't afford their medical treatment under any set of circumstances. But it is a real dilemma, and Unum does take advantage of that because really you would think that maybe they would say, well, if financial reason is why you're not getting care, then we'll send you to somebody or we'll help supplement it. But as far as I know, none of the insurance companies have ever offered that. They're just kind of like, sorry, you don't have the evidence. We'd rather not help you and not pay you in the same way. So congrats on this partial victory. I know a little bit of money you got back helped the client at least in the short term, and you'll continue to fight for her, which seems like it's coming up again relatively soon. You'll be submitting this appeal. I know you try to do it as quick as possible because she's waiting now without any money coming in. So if you're someone who has a Unum long-term disability claim, feel free to reach out to Cesar, myself, any of our long-term disability lawyers. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you, and we always provide an initial free phone consultation. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.